As promised, we are now back with the second part of this 4-part series. If this is your first time tuning into my channel, I'd like to invite you to subscribe and to like this video. It really helps the channel. And for those that already have, please consider turning all notifications on so that you never miss anything that my channel has to offer. So just like we did in part 1, we're going to unearth some dirt and skeletons in this video from NHL teams, meaning that we're going to go over the worst scandal that each franchise featured has ever seen. And with that, here is the worst scandal from every NHL team. Now, if you've been a hockey fan for long enough, then you've probably heard about Todd Bertuzzi. Similarly to Monica Lewinsky, who is famous for one thing, Bertuzzi is known by many due to his ties to a specific event, and that event unfolded back in March of 2004. It's important to set the scene because when the Canucks and Avalanche last versed, prior to, there was a catalyst for bad blood to remain. Reason being, Steve Moore had decided to previously elbow Marcus Naslund intentionally, which left plenty of room for hostility between the two teams. Head coach Mark Crawford, who was just as angry as the team afterwards, had this to say about the incident.
That was a cheap shot by a young kid on a captain, leading scorer in the league, and we get no call. We get no call. I mean, that is ridiculous.
Seeing it largely as a lack of respect and blatant disregard for the safety of the opponent, the Canucks, in their home barn, had something sinister brewing behind the scenes. After previously facing Matt Cook in the contest in the ring, Vancouver wasn't done letting Moore pay for his actions. In the final period of play, as the Avalanche were up 8-2, Todd Bertuzzi began hovering around Moore, waiting for his opportunity to strike. But after asking Moore to drop the gloves, Bertuzzi decided to take a more stealth approach and struck Moore from behind in the back of the head. Moore, who instantly fell on impact due to loss of consciousness, had to be escorted off of the ice on a stretcher. Due to the fact that multiple players piled up onto the victim, he sustained 3 fractured neck vertebrae, facial cuts, along with a concussion. Unfortunately for Moore, this was the last game he would ever play in. Now, if you'd like to know more about what happened with Bertuzzi afterwards, be sure to check out my video in which I go into further detail on. I'll link it down below. Aside from a select couple of coaches like Bill Peters or Iron Mike Keenan, Mike Babcock takes the cake when it comes to terrible coaches. If y'all really want to enjoy a deep dive into the skeletons in Babcock's closet, I'd like to recommend one of my previous videos that goes into a lot more detail overall. Last year, when the Columbus Blue Jackets decided to bring Babcock on board, he brought with him a frightening track record of being a sadistic and controlling type of bench boss. His most recent bout of controversy being the Mitch Marner situation, which was brought to light in November of 2019. In case you are unaware, Babcock was accused of forcing Marner, who was a rookie at the time, to rank his teammates by their work ethic alone. Regardless of intent, this put Marner in a very uncomfortable situation due to Babcock using the power dynamic of player and coach in a twisted way. And unfortunately for CBJ, when Babcock made his way to Ohio's capital last year, he didn't leave those behaviors behind. Shortly before training camp kicked off in Columbus, a bombshell was dropped by Paul Bissonnette on the Spit and Chicklets podcast. According to Biz Nasty, an anonymous player informed him that Babcock had grabbed his phone and started going through pictures, and he didn't like it. But when Boone Jenner and Johnny Gaudreau claimed that he was just asking for family photos, many believed that this was exaggerated because that's what Jenner said, quote, blown out of proportion, end quote. While things may have went smoothly for Jenner and Gaudreau, who are seen as veteran players by now, this was the ultimate nail in the coffin for Babcock right here. The NHLPA was enlisted to investigate the whole situation and began backtracking on the 14th of September. They quickly realized that there was an unnamed player who was younger than the veterans mentioned who spoke up. The player said that Babcock asked him for his phone's pictures outside of team facilities. Due to this fact, the coach was allowed to resign and did so on the 17th of last year. This was definitely a reminder to spectators that some people just never change. It's kind of impressive when you think of it, how a guy that only played 23 games for Dallas could be featured here. And I mean this in the most respectful way possible, but for a guy that put up less than 250 points in 580 games played, he sure is a staple in hockey history, for better or for worse. Anyways, back in 2008, Avery, who managed to find a temporary home in Dallas, was particularly anxious for game day interviews to commence. Since the Stars were set to compete against the Flames that evening, the team had a morning skate at the Saddle Dome hours prior to puck drop. Avery, who had previously ignited some flames, well, one in particular in Jerome McGinley, was given the floor by the media. Instead of elaborating more on his comments on Calgary's captain on why he saw him as boring, the forward then turned his attention to another member of the Flames roster, defenseman Dion Phaneuf. I just want to comment on how it's become a common thing now in the NHL for guys to fall in love with my sloppy seconds, Avery said. I don't know what that's about, but everybody, enjoy the game tonight. Avery was referring to his ex-girlfriend, Alicia Cuthbert, and her relationship with Dion Phaneuf. Following the comments, Avery was suspended by the league indefinitely, but ended up serving 6 games before it was announced that Avery wouldn't be returning to the lineup. When questioned about his take on Avery's comments toward the relationship with his girlfriend at the time, Phaneuf said, "A very disrespectful comment, and the league took action, and I definitely agree with how the league took action today," he said. Regardless of the slander that the couple received by Avery, it seemingly didn't affect their relationship as the two married years later in 2013. Brendan Lemieux, son of Claude Lemieux, in the not-too-distant past, made headlines after biting Ottawa's captain Brady Tkachuk. This was an extremely controversial incident that sparked outrage in the hockey world from all sides. Decades beforehand, however, prior to Brendan taking his first steps, his father stirred up the controversy for something completely different. Back in May of 1996, the NHL was in a very different phase than it is today. Mario Lemieux had just returned from a season-long hiatus, and Patrick Waugh had been traded after the notorious loss to Detroit. If Waugh had any animosity, however, towards Detroit left, he definitely got revenge in the postseason of '96. However, before his dance with Lord Stanley commenced, the Red Wings were just one of many obstacles in the way. And it was during Game 6 that things really came to a head between the Avs and Wings. As the puck made its way to the neutral zone, Chris Draper, who was backtracking, was brutally shoved into the boards unsuspectingly by Lemieux himself. Draper, whose helmet popped clean off, could be shown holding his face in pain as he awaited help. After assistance arrived, it became clear that Draper had facial injuries of epic proportion. Draper, who later recalled the ordeal, shockingly remembers feeling little pain throughout. Been injured before, broke a wrist, dislocated a thumb, and you feel that, Draper said. I didn't feel that hit. I just remember being on all fours. And the reason as to why had to do with the fact that he had received a broken jaw, fractured cheekbone, broken nose, and damage to his right orbital bone. After flying home with his team, the forward recalls finally surrendering to medical care. I had cosmetic surgery to fix my jaw, the broken nose. I think I was in the hospital for 3 days, Draper recalled. Besides getting ejected from the game, Lemieux also received a 2-game suspension for a hit that was deemed by Brian Burch to be premeditated. After that exciting bout of hockey history, we're now going to transition back to the business side of hockey. And while that may sound pretty boring, Edmonton Oilers majority owner Daryl Katz says, "Hold my beer."
And a big part of our future is success moving forward together. Welcome and congratulations.
Thank you very much, Mr. Cates.
So Katz, who is the typical multi-billionaire businessman who decided in 2008 that his hobby was going to be owning the Edmonton Oilers, won $20 million offer later, of course. Around 10 years later, Brazilian model and actress Grace Santo decided to file a defamation lawsuit against Katz. The actress, who appeared in Jane the Virgin, alleged that Katz offered her money for sexual favors. She alleged that she was first approached by Katz with an offer during a photo shoot with a magazine that he was an owner of, Viva Glam. He would pay me $20,000 per day and would see me 5 to 6 times a month, Santo revealed. She also claimed to have received over $35,000 in wire transfers from Katz and his associate Michael Gelman. Gelman also reportedly threatened Santo, she later revealed. Daryl's head of security indicated that they will make sure you don't work in Hollywood ever again, Santo claimed Gelman threatened. Santo also said that there were other threats made as well towards her. I was constantly told by Gelman how powerful Katz was and what would happen if I never crossed him, she said. Despite the fact that the case was thoroughly investigated by the Hawaii police, charges were never filed due to Santo's initial complaint. However, there are other complaints out there about this guy, so while nothing happened in result of these complaints, it definitely does look suspicious on his part that multiple people are coming out saying that he's being creepy. If you watched part 1 of this series, then you'll know fair and well the significance of the name Kyle Beach. And if you don't know, I highly recommend that you watch it because I go into further detail about the scandal itself there than I will be here. So basically, Joel Quenneville was the head coach of the Blackhawks when Beach was getting abused by another former coach for Chicago. And he was one of many that knew what was transpiring during the 2010 playoffs and did absolutely nothing to stop it. Fast forward to over a decade later, and the past had seemingly caught up with Quenneville 3 Stanley Cups later. When everything came out into the open, those who specifically were in positions of power back in 2010 for the Hawks began to be let go from their respective positions within the NHL. GM Stan Bowman resigned on October 26th of 2021. Unfortunately, though, it would take 3 more days and another regular season game for the Panthers to commence before Coach Q would formally step down. Now, the outrage concerning the time discrepancy may have to do with the fact that Quenneville did have to find the time to fly up to New York to speak with Commissioner Gary Bettman in person. However, many were upset by the fact that, as I alluded to, he was allowed to continue coaching. Conveniently enough, at the time the Panthers were on a win streak to start the season, and were undefeated in all 6 games leading up to their tilt against the Bee, which they won as well. Besides just the fact that he continued to coach, NHL fans were also disgusted, knowing that both Bowman and Quenneville were allowed to keep collecting a paycheck after resigning. Quenneville, for example, stepped down with 3 years and $15 million remaining that hadn't hit his bank accounts. As of today, Quenneville is eligible to resume coaching at the NHL level, a decision that was made this summer. With Stan Bowman now recently reinstated with the Oilers, it's only a matter of time before Coach Q resumes his work behind the bench. The experience of attending an NHL game is definitely unique. The crowd, in-game rituals, and intermission festivities make each game inclusive for every viewer in the stands. Another big part of it, especially for children, is interacting with the team's mascot, which most NHL teams have. However, when considering the Kings mascot specifically back in the 2010s, if parents knew who was behind the mask, they would have been nothing short of mortified. Tim Smith, who was once employed to wear the mascot suit for home games, was fired in 2018 due to a sexual harassment suit being filed against him. According to a member of the King's Ice crew, while portraying the mascot, Smith sexually harassed the unnamed female, verbally and physically. Considering that at the time, Smith was also the team's overseer of all game presentations and events, he was also managing the ice crew as well. This allowed for Smith to use his position of power for revenge, as he fired the alleged victim after she complained about being harassed by Smith. According to ESPN, a Kings team official asked her to return to work. Unfortunately, she did so. Also, according to the article, the harassment continued. Besides the fact that Smith was fired being incriminating, he also was sued previously for harassment in 2017. Reason being, a man alleged that Smith once grabbed his ass during an elevator ride. However, the suit ended up being settled outside of court. In conclusion, there's still plenty more where this came from, so keep your eyes peeled for the next part of the series. If you enjoyed my content and are new to the channel, I'd like to invite you to subscribe. And for those of you who are consuming my content on the regular, consider joining my Patreon. If you're looking to see my videos days in advance, see unseen analytics, and be the first to know most channel happenings, Patreon is where it's at. For the cost of a cup of coffee per month, You can receive all these benefits and more. However, if you don't want to commit, I also have some unseen content you can purchase on the site as well. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see y'all next time.